So I'm going to talk and to teach with the authority of common sense. Okay, this is how things work. If you disagree, that's fine. If you gain something from it, great. If you don't like it, too bad, because I really don't care. So this is how government works. This is how it came about, and you can go research this yourselves, try to find it. But I think you will see clearly what I mean by the end of this. This here is a landmass. We'll call it Pinewood, and there's a population there. If we go back to a more primitive time, families had generally an elder who was known to be, the patriarch or the matriarch, and they had wisdom that guided the family, and these people chose to submit themselves to the authority of this elder so that there can be a continuity and clarity and cohesiveness in their daily lives so that they continue to live and thrive. That hasn't changed in principle, except obviously today there's many more people. We're not all necessarily um, closely related. So, and there's multiple different races all around the world, multiple different people, multiple different beliefs. So how do you get things to work together? How to get people to work together? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. But as of now, we'll call this settlement Pinewood. So So if you want to live and last in society or in your life, you have to have order. There has to be organization. You have to work and you have to utilize the land to sustain yourself. That hasn't changed today. That has not changed. People still need to work the land and utilize the natural environment to sustain themselves. And it is completely sustainable. Currently at our global levels, it is completely sustainable, and we can continue to grow and populate. As technologies advance, farming tech also advances, and the knowledge to do with the resources available also increase. However, that doesn't mean that we will accept those technology and knowledge. For example, if you're trying to feed 100 people for a year, and you're using conventional farming methods, as in row crops, herbicides, pesticides, artificially manufactured seeds, genetically modified seeds, um, your yield will be quite low. So it might be pretty hard to provide for that 100 people. Obviously, that depends on the field size, but we would assume that that landmass size would be the same in this second scenario, where you have a greater knowledge of the land around you and you're utilizing every part of the immediate environment and ecosystem to feed that 100 people and also provide for other needs. that is completely sustainable. It works. Um, it's harder to do because it requires more attention and more skill, but it gains a higher yield. Long term, it's healthier. Uh, People aren't dying from all kinds of sicknesses associated with those genetically modified foods. Why Prince Edward Island in Canada has the highest cancer rate in the whole country because of the potato farming, where potatoes are sprayed every single year and the farmers are dying because of what they're putting on the food. So if the farmers are dying just for what's being put on the food, them being exposed to it, what the hell are you eating? Because it doesn't just disappear. That doesn't happen. If a rat eats poison and that rat is ate by an eagle, that eagle could be poisoned also. Like, it's inevitable. It will happen. So, and then ultimately that returns to the ground, which can go into water systems or now affect the other environment. So, poisons are not a good thing, especially not on your food or on the land. That goes to say it's not necessarily just, it depends on how you define poison. Putting salt on plants just to kill a weed isn't poison. You're not poisoning the ground. It may be changing the environment so that a plant cannot grow sufficiently, but it's not going to have collateral damage which will affect the other plants and the environment around it in a substantial way. Salt can be diluted, and it's actually good for a lot of animals and ecosystems in proper quantities. So returning, anyways, Pinewood. These people need someone to lead them. So they decide that they will give this authority to, or give the role of leadership to, the elder, to be able to say to the people that this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, in order for us to continue living and grow and eventually obtain peace. Right? True peace. That is great. That's a good thing. So, what happens now is that as this continues to grow, you'll have more people, more people, and guess what? Perhaps there's another tribe down here that started off the same way, and they're growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's another tribe here, another family, village, town, whatever, community, society. So what's happening here is there's only so much resources on this landmass to sustain this population, and the populations are going to continue to grow. So what happens now is that borders start being established around these areas, so that the environment of this area, we can decide between this tribe, the elder of this tribe will meet up with the elder of this tribe, and they will decide on how they're going to interact with each other. If it's different countries, that would be the job of the foreign affairs minister. So they should be looking out for the good of the tribe who elected them or who has them as their head. Obviously, there's a big chasm between these roles in modern days because, for example, in Canada, our foreign affairs minister actually had an over $1 million debt to the communist run bank, an owned bank in China. the personal debt. So that's a problem because China, they're very smart. However, they're communist. So you don't matter as an individual in that society. You're a number. You contribute to this, and that's all you do. You get food, maybe, except for the tens of millions that starved and continue to starve in these countries today. Unless, of course, you're like uh, some countries that will actually ban listing starvation as the cause of death because so many people are dying and they don't want to make themselves look bad or come back on their leadership. So they will ban labeling starvation as the cause of death of the population. If that's not desperation and deception, I don't know what is. So if you're considering, they will come together, and we'll call this Silver Coast. Cool name. They'll come together and agree where their border is in this regard. Perhaps there's another tribe, over here, and the elder or the elected the government will generally through, of course, maybe an ambassador, but will go through and now negotiate or consider the how they will trade, right? And perhaps even if these countries are in an alliance, they actually agree, you know what? Why is it just us? Why don't we all agree to have our own laws to interact with each other for our own mutual benefit? So, perhaps this tribe can produce a certain type of good, which we'll say they make really nice pots. Okay, vessels or vases, right? Oh, that's really bad. Equally as bad, but whatever. Okay, so they make really nice pots. This perhaps has pinewood. Guess what they have? Pinewood, right? They have lots of wood, and perhaps this is a more swampy area. Perhaps that would probably be more up there, but whatever. Um, so they'll say, you know what? Why don't we agree that we have these borders for separate countries, but we'll trade some of our goods back and forth to help benefit each other. Because if we have lots of trees, we can utilize that. If you don't have many trees, you can use that. So and we can utilize pots to store oils and things like that to allow us to survive. So they're going to engage with trade. What these groups may also do is decide that, hey, you know, you're getting over here, you're getting a bit big. So we want to, make sure that you're not just going to come over here and take our land, right? Because although we've agreed to set these borders, maybe you're going to just decide to, take our land. And we don't want that. Although you've said that, what's really stopping you from just taking our land? Right? Well, this is what you do. You make an army. So that this army will, kind of be scattered along this border to protect it, and there'll probably be something there, obviously. But, and they say, yeah, well, how do we know that you're not just going to come in and steal our stuff? So they also put up an army. And likewise, all these other countries say, you know what, that's a good idea. If you're on the coast, you might also say, hey, we could easily just come down here, right? Or these guys can easily just come up here. So we want to, So we want to make a navy or some ships to protect, our coast here. So we'll keep our ships down over here, to protect the coast. That's very wise, and you have to do that. Otherwise, what's going to stop this nation or this country, this society, from just taking this land right here, cutting it off right there, maybe even taking the city? So as this happens, maybe you also called it, you want to fortify the city, but how the heck do you do that? How do you get an army, and how do you, fortify a city? How do you do that? Well, you need to have laborers and roles in society. So that needs to be the specialization of labor. If these are soldiers, they're agreeing to protect this country, their society, their family. And in order to do that, they need to be paid because they have to spend time training. So how the heck do they eat if they're not out working the field? Well, we have to decide to pay them, to give them food, rations, which happened earlier in society, of course, and still today. They need to get a certain money, to survive, to live, and support their own families that they have. Because obviously they have a right to do that. Who has the right to take that away? No one. So what's happening here is now, if these guys are out doing that, and these guys are building a wall for the city, they're getting paid. Who's paying them? Well, if it's food that they need, that means that they need to have rations of food, which means that a tax essentially needs to be collected, or a percentage of the income. And this, was present in what was called a feudal system at the time. And today we pay taxes to support legitimate and illegitimate, as a matter of fact, social roles. So now, if we're building this city, we need to collect a tax. I don't know, say it's 5%. At the time, it wasn't as simple as just adding a number figure to income, because currency wasn't really a thing at that time, at least in all cultures. So they would just take a certain degree of the food was owed to generally the landlord, or the person who actually owned the land. Because this is a farm. Over here, say there's a little mill, right? Make flour and stuff like that. This wasn't owned necessarily by the people working there. It was owned by, say, a prominent family who's had that mill for generations, or the land for generations. And the people working on the land either lived there and worked, essentially a peasant, and had their everything covered. They had their food, and whatever they needed was there, so they didn't have to worry about the financial burden, so to speak, of the farm. They just lived there.